Joining me now, Congressman from North Carolina, one of my favorite congressmen in the House, does a fabulous job for America. He's also a graduate of Hargrave Military Academy, a founding sponsor, as you know, of the John Fredericks Show. Wouldn't be here without them. And he's got a couple things to say on the debate, on John Boehner, on the Iran deal. Congressman Walter Jones, good to have you with us, sir.
Well, John, thank you very much. And I truthfully believe that what is happening now, you said that you went out early and said that Donald Trump might be the front runner, and he is, and that's because of the deep frustration across this nation when you get Bernie Sanders doing so well on the liberal side and Donald Trump on the Republican side. And that's why a few of us have been willing to step out and try to get Mr. Boehner out of office. So if I could read just very quickly the H Resolution 385, which was introduced by Mark Meadows, congressman from the mountains of North Carolina, and signed by three of us, Ted Yoho from Florida, Thomas Massey from Kentucky, and myself. Just two very quick paragraphs in the resolution. And your listeners can find this if they go on the website of mine, the H Resolution 385. The first is this: whereas the Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 114th Congress has endeavored to consolidate power and centralize decision-making, bypassing the majority of the 435 members of Congress and the people they represent. Last paragraph. Whereas the Speaker uses the power of the office to punish members who vote according to their conscience instead of the will of the Speaker. John, that's why there's so much frustration. Outside, we're talking about the presidential debate tonight, but there's also frustration with Congress. And when you have a Speaker of the House that says to one member, you must vote with me and forget your people, that is not the way this government is supposed to work. It's supposed to work for the people, not for the Speaker of the House.
Okay, so, Congressman, look, there's a lot of frustration with Speaker John Boehner, no question. I mean, just yesterday, almost shockingly, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, the one negotiating chip, the one piece of leverage that the Republicans have in the House is that they can defund stuff, all right? And without them, without you all funding things, there's no government. It shuts down. Right. So Mitch McConnell right off the bat says, well, you know, I'm upset about Planned Parenthood also and a lot of these other things, but we're not going to shut the government down. That's off the table. People are looking at this and they're saying, why is this guy even there?
Well, John, your point is well made, and this is the frustration, and it's deep frustration, just like it is with the American people. The whole thing is that when you have federal money going to an organization that kills babies and then divides their body parts to sell, is America burning? Are we already Rome? Are we burning because we don't care about the morality? We don't care about the gift of God to women, meaning a baby? I don't know. John Boehner is the same way. Diane Black from Tennessee, who's a great member of Congress, had a bill that she put in right after this issue broke about baby parts to defund Planned Parenthood. Why not bring that bill to the floor? Why not let us have a debate immediately about this disgusting act by this group to cut up baby parts? But no, we're not doing that. Mr. Boehner said we're going to hold hearings on it and find out what the real problem is. That's why people are frustrated. That's why Donald Trump's doing so well and Bernie Sanders.
Well, let's get to that. And I mean, it's inconceivable that this wouldn't even be debated in the House of Representatives. I mean, the Republicans have control, and no matter how you stand on pro-life or choice, you've got to find these videos to be disturbing. You know there's going to be a day of reckoning for this, Congressman Jones. And so we can't even debate it on the floor of the United States House of Representatives. I mean, people are just what is Boehner's strategy here?
Well, that's why we're trying to vacate the chair and have a vote with all the members of both parties on the floor of the House for the Speaker's position. Let me make this statement. Washington, you know this, John, Washington is controlled by a few people. The few people can write checks for $1 million. there's a book, if I could buy it for every member of Congress, in my district primarily, not Congress. It's called Extortion. It's How Congress Works. It's written by Peter Swigert. And what the book tells is how leadership, both parties, will hold bills up and then go to the PACs and say, you've got a bill you're interested in. Well, we're going to have a fundraiser. Help us out. We'll help you with the bill. John, that is not representing the people of America.
Mm-hmm. Now, look, there's no question is what is the matter with the system today, and like you say, why people are so frustrated they can't get anything done. This is the John Fredericks Show live at the Quicken Loans Convention Center in Cleveland for the site of the first Republican debate. That's going to be tonight, 9 p.m., Fox News undercard, 5 p.m. I'll be there for the two of them. We're in Cleveland right now with Congressman Walter Jones, Republican, 3rd District of North Carolina. Congressman Jones, I want to get back to the Boehner situation. A lot of people don't really understand your motion, Mark Meadows' motion to vacate. How does it exactly work, and how do you get it out of rules?
Okay, how it works is that a member of Congress puts in a resolution. Any member of Congress could do it, asking that there be a vote on the floor of the House to vacate the chair, which all members, both parties, would vote. All right, what Mark did was to put this in before we broke for the August break so that those of us, if you remember, John, there were 25 members or 24 members, one voted present, so I'm going to say 25. 25
right.
members voted against John Boehner in January. If we had gotten 29 members, then we would have gone to a second round, and the Republicans would have a chance in conference to choose someone other than John Boehner. All right, so the point was I've had many members, and others have too, to say to me, gosh, you know, I wish I had voted with y'all at that point so we could have gone to a second round to get another speaker, or at least a challenge to Boehner. It did not happen. What we think will happen on this is that we hope that as I'm talking to you, and you've got members in Virginia, they'll make their own minds up, and that's fine. I'm not trying to even indicate that I'm trying to influence, because I'm not. I judge every member of Congress to make their own mind up and not be influenced by other members of Congress like we are by the Speaker of the House. What we're hoping is that other members of Congress will get calls from their membership, their constituency, in their home districts, and have conversations with why John Boehner is not doing the job for the American people. Since he has been Speaker, when he became Speaker, the debt of our nation was $13.5 trillion. Now it is over $18.3 trillion. Well, every time President Obama says, I need to raise the debt ceiling, President Obama cannot do it. He can't do it. It takes the House of Representatives. We have to raise the debt ceiling to allow the administration, and that could be Republican or Democrat, in this case Democrat, to raise the debt ceiling so they can borrow more money and get us further and further into debt. It's just so many things that I don't mind telling you. Jim McGovern, who's from Massachusetts, he's a liberal. We've been trying to get the Speaker of the House to bring an authorization of military force, they call it an AUMF, to the floor, to let us debate instead of having the president to make these decisions about how much more bombing we're going to do here, how much we're going to do there. It's our responsibility. Madison said, you in the legislative branch will make the decision about war. So anyway, we just think that John Boehner has got a different agenda than doing what's right for the American people.
Well, look, I think you're right on that, and especially with the AUMF. Congressman Jones, you're spot on that. Our senator here in Virginia, junior Democrat Senator Tim Kaine, has been asking for the same military authorization for months and months and months. Nothing happens. And again, I mean, he told us right on the air, you know, he said the Senate's not the holdup. Boehner's the holdup. He doesn't want to take it to the floor. And, you know, Tim Kaine's view is that John Boehner would rather have the president making these decisions, and so that they don't have to take a position on it, one way or the other. Isn't that a dereliction of your duty as leader?
Well, I want to thank Senator Kane. You're exactly right. I've been following him as well. He's been very outspoken on this issue for months. Yes, it is, and that again comes back to why we put in H Resolution 385. We want to meet our constitutional responsibility, and part of that is, again, as I said, that Madison said, it's the legislative branch that will determine and declare what is the justification for war. So, Mr. President Obama, back in February of this year, John, sent an AUMF to the House. We've done nothing with it. Now Mr. Boehner is saying, well, send us another one. I agree with Senator Kane. I don't think Mr. Boehner wants to deal with it. Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't want to deal with sending young men and women to die, then you don't need to be in Congress.
Well, you got that right. Okay, so it's got to get out of rules. Boehner and his team basically mocked it and said it was going nowhere, and they weren't even concerned about it. So I get back to the same question. I understand doing it for the effect and to get some media out of it, maybe put a little pressure on Boehner, but Congressman Jones, at the end of the day, how do you get this thing to the floor? Because I think if this was out in the open, I think you nailed it. I think the results at the end would be much different than they were. So what has to happen to bring this to the floor?
Well, at some point in time, if it's in rules, and they can make a motion to kill it on the floor, but we'll be very much aware of when that happens, and we'll be on the floor to kind of block that kind of motion without the action of Congress. Let me give you another answer to your question. We heard the day that we were supposed to leave, which was last Thursday, I believe, that the leadership had decided they didn't want to deal with this thing during the break, so that the leadership would go ahead and bring it to the floor and kill it. One of the leaders of the Freedom Caucus told me on the floor of the House, he said, Walter, I went to the whip, which is Steve Scalise from Louisiana, and told him, if you bring this to the floor and try to kill it on the floor, you're going to be embarrassed. Not necessarily that the Speaker would lose, but there would be a lot of Republicans who are getting pressure from back home because they did not vote against Boehner in January that would have to vote for it. So they decided not to bring it to the floor.
Wow.
It will be interesting when this does come to the floor of the House, because we're going to make sure that the full House votes up or down on it.
Well, look, it's a nightmare
that will come,
for a lot of these
Congressman
Jones, for this to come to the floor, because the pressure they're going to get to vote against John Boehner in their individual districts is going to be off the charts. I've seen it in Virginia. And, look, we even had Scott Ridgell, which is, moderately conservative congressman from Southeast Virginia's 2nd District, vote no on Boehner because of the undue pressure that he had. I mean, he had thousands of phone calls into his office. So, to my knowledge, we had several Republicans in Virginia voting the other way. I mean, you take this thing to the floor where somebody has to put their name on it and they have to hit the button.
That's right.
Green button, red button. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. Agree?
Well, John, that's why I really appreciate being on your show, and Scott is a good, all the delegation, and Democrat, Republican, they're all nice guys and think the world of them. But you're exactly right that the whole thing is that the American people, they're so frustrated. They're backing Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. They're frustrated with Washington. If you are frustrated with Washington, then call your member of Congress and tell that member of Congress, look seriously at joining in this effort to vacate the chair by supporting H Resolution 385.
To vacate the chair, H 385. So we want to encourage all of our listeners, call your congressman in Virginia or whoever's listening to us, North Carolina, South Carolina, whatever, H 385. Bring this to the floor. Let's just have an open vote and see who stands where. And I think this is part of what I'm going to call the new transparency that we're after. Common Sense News. Yesterday, the President Obama, making a speech on it, defending it, and it kind of reminded me of an old saying that we learned in history a long time ago, which is if you say a lie over and over and over enough times, eventually people will start to believe it. I mean, we actually had the president yesterday saying, the people that are chanting in Iran, death to America, that's just for effect. That's just for media effect. They don't really believe that. That doesn't have anything to do with the majority there. It's just a small sect of rabble-rousers, and they really want this all to work out. And, by the way, if we don't pass this, it's going to be the end of Israel. I mean, this has got nothing to do with this deal whatsoever. It's going to be the end of Israel, something that if the deal goes down, when Iran is going to get about $150 billion to continue to export terrorism across the Middle East. For the life of me, I can't understand why the president is offering Americans. I don't think he's being truthful. What say you?
Well, John, I'm going to read this report. I brought it home, and I've already spoke to Brent Scowcroft, who you might remember was the national security advisor to two presidents. I'm reaching out to General Anthony Zinni, who I think you know that name. I've spoken to Larry Wilkerson, who was the chief of staff to Colin Powell. I did not read all the information I should have. When we went into Iraq, I was part of sending 4,000 Americans to die for nothing. That's why we have the chaos in the Middle East right now as far as Iraq. I'm going to take my time and do my job as a member of Congress and carefully read this information and then reach out to experts and ask them what is the real story. And I don't know where I'm going with this. My leaning is probably that I don't trust the Iranians, but I want to do what's required of me to do my job.
Well, look, and I respect that. I guess my concern with it is, we're now finding out that there's side deals being made that no one knows what they are. I mean, it just doesn't seem to the average person looking at this Iranian deal that we're getting all the facts. Hopefully you'll be able to find it out. And
I'm going to try.
Look, nobody wants war. We'd all like to have this thing settled. You and I are on the exact same page with it. We were, one of a handful of Republicans that were not in favor of us getting involved in these wars. I think, as history says, we were right. And yep. I'm very confident that after you look into it and get all the facts, that your position is going to be spot on, sir, just like it always is.
John, thank you so much. I really appreciate having a chance to be on your show. You're doing a great job to educate the people. Thank you so much.
All right. We want to thank Congressman Walter Jones for being with us, Republican, North Carolina, District number 3.